Hi, mamas. We have a special treat for you. I love bringing on guests because, I have people that are smarter than me in certain areas. And I definitely have Coulter here. And she is the CEO and founder of Ace Cookie Tutoring. And she's going to explain exactly what Ace Cookie Tutoring is. I mean, it's kind of self-explanatory, but there is a difference when it comes to your children and talking about back to school. I know some of you at this point in time are year round and are going back to school right now, or are probably thinking, gosh, it's midsummer. I haven't even thought about going back to school, but what a great way to start preparing mentally for you, mama, specifically about the following school year and how you can prepare going into it, because maybe we don't give it any thought until like the day before and then stress happens. So I have Jessyka here who's going to be talking to you about the number one reason your teenage daughter doesn't want to learn. If you are frustrated with how to get your teenage daughter to open up to you because all you want is to connect with her as you once did, you're in the right place. Hey, I'm Jeannie Baldomero, a former rebellious teen, now mom of 3 young adults, educator, and the mom mentor, equipping you to create open communication with your girl so she can come to you about anything, even if she's scared. So grab your oat milk latte, breathe, and let's do this together. Jessyka.
Hey, Jeannie, it's glad to be here because it's cool to think we just did an interview together all about boundaries with you, and yeah, I entered out over here about side skills. So I'm glad that you have me.
Of course, and we're gonna have an opportunity to talk about why I interviewed with you, and it's a great opportunity for moms to be a part of it. So we'll be able to talk about that a little later because I think it's going to bring a lot of value to you two mamas. So Jessyka, tell us a little bit about Ace Cookie Tutoring before we get into our topic and why you decided to start that.
Yeah, so Ace Cookie Tutoring will officially be 6 in August. So I don't,
Oh,
don't know if I remember the exact date in August, Jeannie, but I've been tutoring for nearly 10 years now. But specifically, Ace Cookie Tutoring existed for about 6, and I've only been teaching specifically the study skills for about 3 years or so. And that is because of the fact that when I started tutoring, I did what everybody thought, right? You teach a certain class, a certain subject, a certain age, and help like with the papers or the math homework. And I realized that wasn't enough. I
mm,
realized that I was addressing basically like the symptoms of this lack of study skills, but that the teens I was tutoring didn't actually know how to learn. They didn't know how to take notes. They didn't use a planner, so they had no time management skills. Like all 12 study skills I teach to the nerdy method, they were missing. And I didn't know that until a couple years, went home, made a list, and I was like, oh, these are the things that I used as my nerdy self in middle school, high school, and college. And these are all of the things that the teens I'm tutoring are missing. So that led to the Love to Learn Study Skills program, and then eventually realizing, oh, I'm using the nerdy method as I teach these skills in the program. So
mm.
that's a quick answer.
No, I love that. I love that you're not just the tutor. You started off tutoring by topic, by situation, by
Okay.
test, or by a specific subject or whatever the student is learning. But you also pulled back and realized there is a commonality here in why students are continually getting stuck, which is now your passion. Now, why? Okay, here's a question for you, because I was a former elementary school teacher. Why not education and instead tutoring?
So, like, why not be a teacher? Is that what you mean, Jeannie?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And that's to me a simple answer. So I've worked in a school as a paraprofessional, and so I was with the middle schoolers, and then I was working with the high schoolers, and the high schoolers were technically ED kids is what the term was at the time, the emotionally disturbed, I think, and then the kids that I worked with in the middle school, they weren't the life skills kids. They were kind of a level up, but they couldn't still be in the general education classes on their own.
Mhm.
And that was all one on one. So I absolutely loved that. And that's what I realized. Oh, well, tutoring is one on one. And so it's like if I love helping the teens that way and I get to be very personalized, really get to learn with them, really get to learn about them. And then when I thought about a group of kids, it's like you don't get to know them as well. It's like you have to try to not only teach them stuff, but then you got to try to keep the behaviors in check too. And that's a different set of skills, a different specialty. And so I have my Smart Click, or some of our listeners might know, is the cohort that was the group study skills tutoring as well. And I've done that successfully, but I also have contractors that love it even more than I do. So it's like I've designed the curriculum with some help from a couple contractors, but I would let them have the group. So I love the one-on-one so much more than I love the group.
Oh, I totally understand. When I was in education, I took a position that was more one-on-one with reading, and
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely love it because I felt like I can get to the nitty-gritty and really get to know the kids more, the students more. So I understand that. So super smart on you because you actually get to do roll up your sleeves and have a relationship one-on-one with students where I think the growth actually happens, right? It starts with relationships. Like I say on this podcast, it's really how do you keep the relationship while guiding them, right?
Exactly.
Hey, mamas, I have some exciting news for you. Guess what? I have a free event for you. Just hold tight, I'll explain. Starting August 4th, you'll have the opportunity to join me at I'm one of the over 30 speakers who want to help open up your teen's mind and feed it as well. If your teen doesn't love to learn for the sake of learning, the CEO and founder of Ace Cookie Tutoring, Jessyka, has tools and strategies to change that. Jessyka reached out because she knows you don't want to nag or argue with your child about homework, projects, or even something like getting to school on time every morning. We're here to help. Just join us at Learn It. You can find the link in my show notes and start this new school year off right. If you're pressed for time and can't make it during this week, get a VIP pass instead. New interviews are dropped each day for a week starting August 4th. I'm one of them. Make sure to check out the schedule and find me. My interview is about winning big on boundaries and expectations and how to set them to start the school year right. Learn It is an event for mamas of tweens, teens, and young adults just like you. It's a chance for mamas to find information and new ideas to make life better for themselves and their teens as the new school year gets started. So I personally invite you, mama, on this podcast, go get your free ticket by going to the link in my show notes right after this show. Go and do it, and I'll see you at Learn It. Okay, so let's get into the number one reason your teenage daughter doesn't want to learn.
Yes. I was like, do I give it away right away, Ginny, or do I make our listeners wait for it? So the answer is really, really simple. And how we go about fixing it isn't as simple, but the reason this is simply for the fact that teens are missing study skills. Like that's simply like how do we love to learn? How do any of our kids love to learn if they don't know how to? And for all of us adults, it's like, okay, just think about something that you've done for the first time that you had no idea what you were doing, whether it was at work, whether it was at home, whether it was when you were in school. Like just literally, how can we enjoy something that's difficult that we have, like we feel like we're just confused, like we're overwhelmed, like we just have no idea where to start. So that's why we have to teach our teens how to learn through study skills so they can actually enjoy learning.
Wow. Well, see, there you go. Just study skills, learn study skills. And how would you recommend? Okay, so mom's listening. Okay, so it's study skills. Like, how do we even start knowing where exactly to fill these gaps?
And that is a good question. So the way I address that, Jeannie, is simply for the fact of I have yet to ever meet a teen that knows the entire nerdy method, that knows all 12 study skills. So I mean, that's pretty much just safe to say that all of our listeners, unless they've gone through the Love to Learn program, they probably don't know the 12 study skills. The other fact is that there are kind of the three signs. I tell my mamas there's basically now those three red flags, either things that your teens are saying, things that your teens are like thinking, whether you realize it or not, and basically the actions they take let you know study skills are missing. And those are a lack of motivation, a lack of understanding, like why am I even studying, let alone a lack of focus. And so basically, if we hear our teens say, this teacher's mean, or this class is so boring, or why am I learning like this? Like those all are big indicators that study skills are missing, because our teens that love to learn, they are loving to learn for the sake of learning, not because they have to learn.
Mm, that makes so much more sense. Now I think about my own kids. When I actually have heard them say that that they don't like this class, or they feel like they don't want to go. Like I don't have anything to study for. When
Exactly.
you
You
know
got
it's
it.
not the truth, you're like, wait, no, you always have something to study for.
Yes.
So how, okay, now this podcast is about open communication and really trying to understand what our teenage girls are going through. Now, one struggle that our moms have is actually pulling that out, right? I heard you say listening for cues is really, really important. What else would you say in digging a little bit deeper in these conversations? What would you say would be helpful for moms that are really having trouble pulling that out of them? Like, how do I know you're even having trouble besides the grades, right? The reflections of the grades and complaining about school, because that could be misinterpreted of like, I just don't like school because I'm being rebellious, not because I'm having trouble. Like, how would you recommend having that conversation with, the moms having that conversation with their daughters?
Yeah. So I feel like there's a couple things. So I think number one would be all of our listeners, all our mamas realizing that they're mama. And so their teen is already going to go, well, there's that separation because she's mama. And so that's the reason that people like me exist, is because we are the third party. We're the more objective person who's not the authority figure and not the parent, not the teacher, who really gets to be a lot more objective and even almost come in as a friend. I've had so many teens that I've worked with that I tell them things that I find out later that their mamas have been telling them for years. And so their mamas are like, he's listening to you, but I said that, last semester, and it's like, okay, if it comes from me, I'm more of a trusted source according to your teens than you are. So it's like you're supporting me, not the other way around. So
Yep.
that would be kind of tip number one, would just let our mamas know, okay, you say things, you do amazing things. We know that you love your teens, otherwise you wouldn't be listening. And yet your teens are getting to the point where they're just more independent. I mean, literally the brain chemistry says they are separating, like they like have to survive. And they don't necessarily need anything from the parents anymore, or at least that's what they think.
Right.
So that would be number one, is just letting our mamas know, okay, there's nothing wrong with you, it's just literally part of what your teen's brain's doing that you can't control and he or she can't control.
Yes.
And I guess the other big thing would be just knowing, again, thinking about how uncomfortable it is for us as adults to sometimes ask for help, because
Mhm.
it is so much easier, no matter if we're talking a teen girl or a mama, to shrug off our shoulders and say, I don't care, it doesn't matter, than it is to say, I am really confused, I really need help. And it kind of comes down to that safe space too. The idea of, do we even feel comfortable and asking for help, let alone do we know how to? Because that's a study skill right there, self advocacy. The idea of, yeah, do I ask for help? How do I ask for help? And then what kind of help do I need? And what does that look like? Because when I'm talking to teens and we're talking school, I always go to the learning styles. And so I'm always talking about, okay, do you send an email or do you stay after school? Do you raise your hand in class? Or is this a matter of stopping in between classes? So, like a conversation, very auditory, whereas an email very visual, whereas actually like acting out something or drawing something out with the teacher is very kinesthetic.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I totally understand everything you said, especially being a former educator. And for mamas, it's like really it's understanding basically when it comes down to it is understanding your girl and where she's coming from, right? And getting outside of yourself and understanding her situation at the time, like you were saying earlier, just go back to when you were a teenager or a tweenager and how uncomfortable it is to not know, to be stuck, let alone kind of trying to figure out how to do this on your own because of course you're a teenager and think that you can do everything by yourself, right?
yes.
So, and it probably doesn't even help too because I found myself saying this to my teenagers when they were teenagers is, hey, you got to figure it out yourself. And so when you say you got to figure it out yourself, it's uncomfortable to say, well, how do I ask you for help if I have to figure it out myself? And it's really how we posture and how we communicate that with our girls. I love the advice that you're giving about one, it's not about you, mama.
No.
Because you are mom. And I love you brought this point because it definitely supports what I've been saying about having mentors in their lives, having the cool factor, right? Like even a college girl, like that's a little older in your life, they're your megaphones. It's basically everything you've said, but through a different person. And
Mhm.
it'll likely sink in just because you're not mom. But think the same, but you get the same
Mhm.
right without it being about you. So, which is great because it becomes about her. Okay. So we talked about being uncomfortable and having that safe space so that they could actually ask for help, right? And it's just how we set that up. I know that we had talked a little bit earlier about assessing the year into the new one.
Mhm. Yes.
How would you advise moms to do that?
Mm. So I thought about bringing that up, Jeannie. So I'm glad that you did. I was like, but where does that fit in? So the answer is with back to school. One of the things I see all the time as a life skills tutor is that nothing changes because nothing changes. Like I hear all the time that summer isn't the right time to learn science skills, and we could have a whole interview on that, Jeannie, because that's so not true. But when we're talking back to school, we have to have a goal for the year. Like we have to go into this new year hoping to make some changes because if last year didn't go the way we wanted to, whether it was the grades, whether it was homework not getting turned in, whether it was mom and daughter just constantly fighting about homework and studying or school. I mean, we need to figure out right now what didn't work so we can make some changes before we're in the exact same position. So sometimes that conversation simply looks like, what is it that you liked about school? What is it that you didn't like about school? Because if it's simply a matter of, okay, I like school, but this one teacher made my life miserable, or I can't stand having a locker next to this one girl. I mean, sometimes those things can be changed now. Like, okay, maybe you never have that teacher again. And it becomes a conversation of what didn't you like about that teacher? Because a lot of times I see it all the time that it's we didn't like that teacher because that teacher doesn't teach the way you learn. And so that's another reason for the study skills is like we have to know how to adapt our learning. And if we don't know how we learn, how can we know how to adapt? And how do we know that it's the teacher that was maybe the problem? Maybe he talked all the time. And if it's someone like me who's not at all auditory, that stinks like majorly.
Yeah.
But yet knowing that about yourself, lets you know, okay, I'm not too dumb to learn the material. It's not that I can't, it's just going to take some extra work and some, adapting on my part.
You're right.
And then something like homework. I mean, a goal there would be, okay, if we know that was a problem, that's what led to the grades, that's what led to the fights. Well, in a perfect world, I imagine all of our listeners, Jeannie, want their kids to turn in all the homework. Like that's what I want as a study skills tutor, because that was my nerdy self, my straight A self.
Right.
But that's a lot to ask a team. If we didn't turn in any homework at all last year, and suddenly we're saying, hey, you're going to high school now, you have to grow up, you got to turn in all homework, that's just a disaster waiting to happen. Let's like pick one class, get the homework turned in on that, focus on learning the study skills, get all of that going better even in that one class. Well, then suddenly it snowballs because our teens will realize, hey, I can turn in homework. Hey, I can actually do this. And they're going to feel more confident, which is another study skill, to continue doing that in other classes. So just figuring out what went wrong, Jeannie, last year. That's where we got to start and then figure out what's our focus or goal for this year.
Love that. I really do. I love how it kind of circles back to having those conversations,
Yes.
establishing a goal. It gives teens a new hope, I think, and a fresh start to have goals and to also reflect back on what didn't work or yeah, and I love the questions you asked. It's super simple and it's not
Oh,
accusatory at all. It's like, what did you like about school? What did you like about school? And then starting to dig a little bit deeper if it was a specific teacher, like you were saying, maybe it wasn't the teacher, maybe it was just the way he taught, right? And being able to what you said, one of the study skills is to be able to adapt to it because this is what I'm currently saying to my kids that are in college. I mean, you can pick your teacher based on reviews, but once you're in the class, like your teacher really, and this sounds mean, they don't care, whether or not you adjust to his learning style. They just are teaching, and that you have to be the one to adapt to his teaching style.
Got it. Yes.
Right?
Mhm.
So I love that you also are able to teach students to empower themselves to learn and not allow circumstances to dictate the outcome of what they want for themselves. So that's
Mhm.
great. I love that.
Yes, I think you said something very important right there, Jeannie. The idea of we get to choose, and that's true of all of us as adults, all of our teens at home. The idea of okay, yeah, what is it that we want, and what are we going to do about it? How do we get there? Which is self advocacy, that's confidence, that's soft skills. There's a whole bunch of side skills that go into that.
And that's exactly what you do as a tutor. Now, I before we even started this interview, I was saying, so what's the difference between a tutor and a coach?
And I feel like that's something I wish I could talk about more often because I feel like we've all heard the term executive functioning coach, but yet I gotta tell you, Jeannie, I'm a tutor. Since I've been a tutor for so long, that's the word that resonates with me. And I've talked to other people in my interviews, like when I got an interview at you who call themselves, yeah, a mentor or a coach, they're like, I'm not a tutor. And it seems like what we can all agree on is that me as a tutor and tutors in general, there's more teaching involved. You asked about teacher versus tutor earlier. That seems to be more of the answer. It's more of a, okay, we come up with a solution together. And then I, as a tutor, actually help you make it happen. Whereas a coach, a mentor, it's more kind of top level. A lot of times it's more, okay, I'll check in with you. This is what we've decided. But there's less of this is how you're going to do it step by step, less teaching, more guiding, which seems like a very kind of fine line. But I gotta tell you, when I think of myself as a study skills coach, it's like, no, I want to teach you actually how to use these 7 rules for note taking. I actually want to teach you, okay, do you self advocate this way or that way? Like they're to me very, very different. So to me, I need more involved, which is why.
Yes. Yeah, I picture this as you're describing it. A coach is somebody that goes and tells you the play and goes and watches you do it. Whereas a tutor, it's like, no, we're doing this together. I'm going to run the ball with you until
Exactly.
you understand what it means to run the ball. And then we're
Got
moving
it.
on to the next thing. Also, I love that you offer this for kids. And I could tell just by speaking with you the passion you have about all the things that you've done and applied for yourself in your own life and how you want that for kids, that every child, every student can learn and will learn. It's just a matter of figuring it out what it is, right?
You got it. Yes, I 100% agree that it makes me so sad when I hear from teens and even sometimes from parents that okay, she's not a math kid or she's never going to be good at writing papers and it's like no, not true. Like every single person out there can learn anything they want to if they know how to learn through the nerdy method. Yes.
Right. Right. And it's so important because it doesn't end in school, right?
No.
I've heard a statistic that, oh gosh, right after high school, I don't know, 42% of kids stop reading.
It's scary. Yeah, like the number
Stop
of people that
reading.
have never read another book, it's
Yeah.
terrifying. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Or like, yeah, had their own desire to read a book for themselves, which
Hmm.
is, in life as an adult, I think it's necessary, especially if you want to go somewhere. Okay, thank you so much for saying that. One of the things that our students and the reason why our daughters don't want to learn, it's because they're missing study skills. And that's a huge difference between studying, passing a test, or having trouble in a specific class, as opposed to actually learning the skills to help them not in just that class, but in other classrooms and other future classes that they may have. What is one tip? And you've already given so many tips in here, valuable lessons. And mamas, if you've missed this, I want you to replay this again and listen to it again when you have your notebook. But what is one tip that you would like to leave with moms?
Yeah, I feel like the starting point for all of this is to kind of realize, okay, yeah, study skills are missing. Like that's just sometimes a big awakening for teens, let alone their mamas, the idea of, okay, that's the real problem. And then to me, the next step, once we kind of accept that, okay, it's not you, it's not your teen, it's just literally their skills missing here, that foundation for learning. Then the next step I always take teens on is a learning style assessment. And that is simply for the fact of we've got to figure out if your child is more visual, auditory, kinesthetic. And I know lots of people have strong opinions about learning styles, but I would tell you, as my mama says, you can find research to support anything.
Yeah.
So I always just figure out, are we more visual, auditory, kinesthetic? Because once we know that, that impacts everything. I mean, the way a child sits down to do homework as a visual learner is very different than what a kinesthetic learner does, let alone if we're talking like studying, like you said, for a test or working on a project or just literally learning in general, like we talked about sitting in a classroom. We've got to know that preference because yeah, we can learn any which way, but we all, every single one of us has a way that we find easier, that we actually want to do, that we look forward to. And that's going to make a huge difference in this school year, let alone beyond.
Love that. Yeah, the easiest way to fill in that gap is to reach them where they're at right now. Start from where they're at, right? And in order to do that is to do an assessment. Awesome. I love. And earlier in this interview, we talked about how we met
Yes.
and that I'm speaking at your parent summit for back to school. So it's called Win Boundaries and Expectations, which I'm super excited about. But I know there are other speakers there, and I'm going to let you go ahead and explain and invite moms who are listening about your summit.
Yes, it's an awesome event. I absolutely feel like I have to host like a back to school event, being a tutor. And
Right.
this would be the fourth year of my back to school event, always changing it every year, making it even more and more better. But this year it's called Learn It. Open your mind, your teen's mind, and feed it. And I don't know if our listeners love Weird Al or not, but I do. So there's the kind of the Learn It's based off Michael Jackson's Beat It, which is
Yeah.
Weird Al's Eat It. So we're kind of just continuing the fun trend. And there's going to be around 30 speakers. So everything from, like you said, talking about expectations, boundaries, we've got test anxiety, we've got all sorts of nutrition. We've obviously got the more academic side of things with the study skills. So there are lots of topics to choose from. All the interviews are pre-recorded, so our mamas can very easily jump in whenever they can and listen in. The event officially starts August 4th, but there's 7 days of interviews as well as awesome gifts, resources to download every day. And there's even a replay weekend. So if our listeners don't catch this interview when it's dropped, they still have plenty of time to listen in whenever they can.
I love that you provide this resource and resources of lots of people in the field to help their mamas. So, mom, if you are interested in attending this Learn It workshop with over 30 speakers speaking on various topics to help you and your teenager, I want you to go to my show notes. I'll have the link there. Or where can they sign up?
So the best place is probably either Facebook or my website. So website is acecookietutoring.com, and then Facebook, I have a group teaching teens to love learning, which is where all the details will be and speakers like you will be interacting with their mamas.
Love that. Okay, so acecookietutoring.com. Go ahead and sign up, mamas, and I would say do it now. Thank you, Jessyka, for coming on and sharing, gosh, the number one reason why daughters don't learn. And I'm hoping, mamas, that this information has helped you prepare for the incoming year. And I'll see you at the Learn It Summit.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jeannie. Thank you, mamas.
Hey, friend, if this podcast inspired you or encouraged you or helped you in any way, I'd love for you to share it. You can screenshot this episode and share it in your stories on social media or text it to a friend who can use the support. It's the best way you can thank me. I want to let other mamas know they are not alone. I'd love to stay connected with you. You can find me at raisingherconfidently.com. Until next time, live full of grace, Jeannie.